Good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Ann Stadius. I'm the Recreation Manager for Fitness for your City of Port St. Lucie's Parks and Recreation Department. We're so glad to have you tonight. I'm honored to be here to share with you tonight the 11th session of Healthy You, a series of conversations. These conversations are often on challenging topics, but they need to be had. I'm not sure if that's proper grammar, but they do. So before we get started, just a few general housekeeping items. At the registration table, it's a voluntary sign-in. If you would like to sign in, right over there in the back of the room is a table where you can do so. We have restrooms for those of you here in person, out these doors and to the left. There's some snacks, coffee, water over on the table. For those of you in person, after our presenter finishes her presentation, if you have any questions, just raise your hand and obviously we will call on you and answer your questions. Those of you on Zoom, you can just put it right into the Zoom and we'll take care of that at the end of the presentation as well. If anyone has a cell phone with them tonight, please put it on silent or vibrate so we're not so we're not disturbed during our presentation. So Healthy You is the brainchild of our Deputy Director, Patty Roberts. Patty, after going through an 8-year battle with her son, lost him to an overdose. He was 22 years old, and if Patty were here tonight, she would tell you that that happened 1,108 days ago. And she always says that at every presentation, and I find that very impactful that she counts the days. So I wanted to make sure that you understood that that's what got this started, and that's where she's at, 1,108 days since her beautiful 22-year-old Danny lost his battle. Now, we have a wonderful presenter tonight, Miss Ann Posey from Cleveland Clinic Behavioral Health Center. And let me, because I can't memorize it, I'm going to read you her bio. So Ann Posey, LMHCNCC. She will tell you what that means later because she is the director of the Behavioral Health Center at Cleveland Clinic Indian River Hospital. Ann Posey has been with the Behavioral Health Center at Cleveland Clinic Indian River Hospital since November 2017. Ms. Posey is a licensed mental health counselor in the state of Florida and a nationally certified counselor. She has over 20 years' experience in behavioral health care, having worked in inpatient, residential, and outpatient settings. She has a passion for ensuring that those consumers with mental illness get the best possible care. Ms. Posey has been part of the executive leadership in several agencies that impact the adults and youth with behavioral health needs, including psychiatric hospitals, community mental health, and child welfare and juvenile justice systems. Since coming to the Behavioral Health Center, Ms. Posey has brought that same level of commitment to change to ensure that services being provided are the best available. The Behavioral Health Center is a thriving program offering acute care services to both children and adults in Indian River County. So now, without further ado, I present to you Miss Ann Posey.
Thank you. I feel free. I always listen to that bio and feel very, very old. But I'm very happy to be here tonight. As Ann said, I think we're the Ann and Ann show. I am a licensed mental health counselor and a nationally certified counselor. I've been a licensed mental health counselor since 1989. Keep my license active, although I'm more in an administrative role now. Since the pandemic, however, I will tell you that I've probably done more service provision, direct service provision, primarily to the caregivers that I work with, because this is a very stressful and challenging time right now. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to stay mentally fit during stressful times. Anyone believe this is a stressful time? Anyone have any stress? I think I think we sometimes don't even realize how much stress we encounter during this time. We were talking right when I started and talking about COVID fatigue. You know, that we're 18 months into this, and I think a lot of us are just very fatigued and stressed just by the ongoing dealing with this. So why do we need to worry about our mental health? Why is that important? Statistically, current stress levels of Americans are about 20% higher than the global average. We're a stress-laden society. I think sometimes we thrive on it. You know, that there's this big belief that we need to be under a certain level of stress as Americans in order to achieve different things. 55% of Americans report feeling stressed out on a daily basis. That's over half. That's quite a high number. And 63% of U.S. workers feel ready to quit their jobs to avoid work-related stress. And those statistics are bothersome when you look at statistically how people are feeling about their stress levels. And I will tell you, in the last year and a half, we've seen that number go up as far as how people are feeling. I'm going to talk about the impact of the pandemic because I don't think you can talk about stress and not talk about the impact of the pandemic. So we now know that nearly 8 in 10 adults, 78%, say the coronavirus pandemic is a significant source of stress in their life. 2 in 3 adults say they've experienced increased stress over the course of the pandemic. And in addition, societal stressors. So in addition to the pandemic, we have all these other societal stressors. You know, we have global warming. We have, as I pulled in, saw there was a school shooting in North Carolina. So we have those types of things. We have a lot of racial distress and racial injustice that's happening. And in healthcare, it's very stressful right now. So in addition to the pandemic, we have all these other societal factors that contribute to our stress levels. And nearly 2 in 3 adults say the number of issues facing America is currently overwhelming to them. We just have a lot going on, and I think that we need to recognize that. I'm a big believer that I can handle anything if I have a plan, and I can handle anything if I know what I'm dealing with. But if we don't acknowledge what's going on, it's much harder for us to cope with life. So what is stress? I always talk about stress as being a strain on a structure. That's actually one of the definitions in the dictionary about what a stressor is. So if you think about a bridge, so it's actually an engineering term. If you think about a bridge, there are stresses that happen to that bridge. So the weight of cars on the bridge, hurricanes, wind, sun, you know, all these things that impact the bridge. Not all are negative, but there are a lot of things that impact the bridge and put strain on them. And then you can get to a point where that structure fails because of the amount of stress that is presented to that structure. So a stressor can be a one-time occurrence, or it can be a repeated course of occurrences that can cause stress. Routine stress related to the pressures of school, work, family, and other daily responsibilities is something that we deal with daily. One thing I want to point out, though, is that not all stress is negative. So we need a certain amount of stress in our life. Anyone ever had a deadline that they had to reach? You know, if I didn't have a level of stress, I always believe work expands to fill the time allotted, I might not get that project done. So I need a little bit of that stress and anxiety to complete tasks throughout the day. You can also see stress brought about by sudden negative change, and that's more what we call traumatic stress. So something negative happens in our life. We have a death, we have a loss of a job, a sudden illness, a divorce. There's a scale called Selye's Stress Scale, S-E-L-Y-E, and it's been around a very long time. I remember learning about it years ago when I was in graduate school, and it talks about the impact of stresses on us and what people consider the most stressful things in their life. So what do you think the top ones are? Shout it out. Well, death. Death is like the number one. Death of a spouse, death of a loved one. Divorce is on there. But you know what else is on there? Retirement, right? So retirement is actually one of the most stressful events that people encounter. because people often go into retirement thinking it's going to look a certain way, and sometimes it doesn't look that way. So I get a lot of enjoyment and a lot of my self-worth from work, you know, and sometimes even when I'm on vacation, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm kind of ready to go back to work now. And I think to myself, what am I going to do when I retire? I don't like to play golf. But sometimes people will come down and they'll think, I'm going to retire, I'm going to play golf. But then maybe they have health issues, or maybe the fees are too expensive, or maybe they have a loss of a loved one. So retirement, which is considered a positive event, can also be extremely stressful. Another extremely stressful event that most people consider a positive event is marriage. So we talk about divorce, but actually marriage falls really high on Selye's stress scale. Anything that is a major life change can be a stressor. And we pay attention to those negative stressors. And a lot of times when we have a negative stressor, we get a lot of help. You know, when my father passed away, people called, people sent cards, people brought meals. There was a lot of attention. People called to check on me. A lot of attention given, okay, for that. But I tell you what, when people get married, everybody's like, oh, you know, they're having a great time, maybe not understanding the challenges going with that first year of marriage. So a lot of times during positive events, we don't get the support that we get, you know, from those more negative stressors. Traumatic stress can also be major events such as war, assault, natural disaster, where people will certainly acknowledge that stressor and they'll remember that. You know, I can remember where I was on 9/11. You know, I remember it vividly. I was at my daughter's school at a PTA meeting. It was a morning PTA meeting, actually School Advisory Council, and remember hearing that news. So sometimes those traumatic stressors have a very big impact on us and what we remember. So as I said, not all stress is bad. We have what's called the fight or flight response. So when we encounter a stressful event, certain things happen to our bodies that help us to deal with that. If I'm driving along down the road and I see that light turning yellow, as my daughter says, that means speed up and go very fast, right, to get through that yellow light. And I look off to the side and see someone anticipating the green and coming through, you know, at the same time, I need to be able to react to that. So what's going to happen is my heart rate's going to speed up. I'm going to start to breathe shallowly, in a more shallow manner. My adrenaline is going to start to pump. All the blood is going to come from my extremities, my hands and feet, into the center of my body where I need it to create energy so that I have that energy to hit the brake, stop. Okay, so we're going to go up this cycle like this, the stress cycle. And when we get to the top, after that stressor's over, and hopefully I avoid that car, you know, I'm probably going to pull over to the side of the road and get really shaky, maybe even cry. And that's the recovery period that comes after a major stressor. So we need a level of stress in our life to react and to respond to events. It helps us to have, to motivate us when we have a job interview or we have a test. We need to have a certain level of adrenaline and a certain level of stress. So some of those things that are up there, increased heart rate, increased respiration, muscle tension, and increased activity, those are good things. We want those to happen. You know, we certainly don't want to be confronted with a threat and just calmly kind of walk through it. I talk about, so probably, you know, men and dinosaurs maybe didn't live at the same time, but if you, back in the old days, if you walked out of your cave and you were confronted with a dinosaur, you had two options, right? You could fight or run. So you could either beat that dinosaur to death with your club, or you could run like crazy to get away with it. What happens now, though, is when we're confronted with stressors, often we don't have that ability to fight or flee. So if my boss comes in and is upset with me about a project and tells me that if I don't get it together, that he might fire me, I'm going to have that stress response. All that's going to happen, but I can't beat my boss to death with a club, you know, because that's not going to work. And I really can't run away from work either. And so all that stress kind of has nowhere to go. And if I don't do anything, it's going to build. And so the next time then I come home and maybe the stressor is my husband hasn't taken out the garbage, I might have that response to yell or to act out in that manner because I'm carrying around that stress. So long-term stress can harm us. Long-term stress on the body is when we are confronted with these stressors and we never really return to normal. We just constantly feel in that state of stress. And the life-saving reactions to acute stress over a long time can cause things like, can contribute to heart disease, to hypertension, diabetes, and depression and anxiety. So we want to be aware of our stress levels and we want to be actively dealing with them so that we don't have those health issues that can come along with long-term stress. I think it's important to understand our feelings during a pandemic, and there is a lot of research that's been done on how we respond emotionally to disasters. And that research has been done through disasters like Hurricane Katrina, 9/11, other disasters that we've gone through as a country, and what the reaction has been. So during a disaster, we have emotional responses that are pretty predictable. So we know that during the pandemic, when the news started and they said, hey, there's this thing in China, that people are getting sick with, we were like, I wonder what that's all about. And we thought about it, but it didn't really impact our lives in much of a fashion. And that's that kind of pre-disaster warning phase. During that time, we might feel vulnerable. We might feel a little bit of anxiety, but it's probably not impacting us a great deal. Then we move into the impact phase. So I remember kind of when that happened, and the first case in the United States. And when you're in healthcare, this is kind of amplified because we pay a lot of attention to it. I work with infectious disease doctors. You start to hear about it every day. And now you're feeling the impact. Now people are getting anxious, getting frightened. This can happen here. What are we going to do? Disasters that are slower actually have more impact than ones that are rapid. So if there's a tornado, people feel these phases really quickly, and then they kind of can get back to normal more quickly. But in a disaster like this that's long term, we feel these phases for a lot longer. Then we moved into the heroic phase, and I again remember this vividly. And working in healthcare, we saw it. So the community bands together. Healthcare providers were heroes. We had parades. People brought pizza and donuts every day. I remember chalk art on our sidewalks. And the community as a whole presented a sense of altruism and rescue behavior. So people were, what can we do? How can we deal with this? Then I believe when the vaccine came out, we kind of moved into the honeymoon phase. And this is when assistance is readily available, community bonding occurs. I work in behavioral health, but when we stood up vaccine clinics in Cleveland Clinic, that was like a whole service line that we really didn't have people hired to do. So all of us volunteered in vaccine clinics. I would check people in, registration. And I remember people coming for the vaccine and sitting together and talking and bonding, and kind of cheering each other on, oh, I got the shot. I remember a woman, 102 years old, who came in and got her vaccine, and everybody cheered for her. So there was all this, oh, we're on the other side of it, and we feel like we're dealing with it effectively, and so we're in that honeymoon phase. But what's happened now is I think we've moved into what's called the disillusionment phase of the disaster. And this is actually the phase that lasts the longest emotionally when people are dealing with any kind of disaster. So now optimism starts to turn to discouragement, and stress continues to take its toll. Physical exhaustion, substance abuse, and different things like that begin to surface, and people feel abandoned. This phase can last for months sometimes, or even years, and it's extended by trigger events such as the anniversary of the disaster. And I think clearly right now we're in the disillusionment phase during this pandemic. The good news is that we know, based on history, that we will come out of it, and we will enter the reconstruction phase. So this is where we start working through our grief, We recognize that we're going to work together, we're going to get through this, but things may look different. So we may change how we feel about things or things that we do, or as a society, we'll adjust to our new normal and we'll move through it. And I kind of clearly remember that with 9/11. So I remember 9/11 and, you know, all the community bonding that happened after that, that heroic phase. And then I remember when things changed for us, right? So when we started going on airplanes, you know, we had to take off our shoes. And now that's normal, but then it was not, okay? So those are the things that'll happen in the reconstruction phase. I think it's important to know this because I think sometimes when we feel despondent, we feel like it's never going to end, but we know historically it is going to end in some fashion. All right, it is. Our lives may look a little different, but we know that that's okay. We know that during a disaster, psychological casualties can outweigh physical casualties 4-to-1. So we're expecting what we call the mental health surge following the end of this pandemic. And we're already seeing it. We're already seeing more and more people looking to access behavioral health care. And we need to remember that a lot of these things can be long-lasting, and that we may be dealing with it. And I know this all sounds very depressing, so I hate this first part of my presentation because it sounds very depressing and discouraging. But I also believe that in order to deal with issues, we have to acknowledge them and face them. So what are the signs and symptoms of stress? I think it's very important to remember that when people are dealing with stress or reactions to stress, that does not mean you're mentally ill. So, you know, having a mental illness is very different than dealing with stress or a stress reaction. So people will tell you, I feel like I'm losing my mind. You know, I'm anxious, I can't sleep. Maybe I'm crying or depressed, I'm irritable, I feel worry or panic or fatigue, tired. And those are all pretty common symptoms of a stress-related response. I spoke to the respiratory therapist where I worked this morning, and one of the respiratory therapists said, he said, I go home and cry at commercials. He said, I never did that. And I said, well, that's pretty normal, right? You're tired, you know, your stress levels are very high, you're dealing with all of this. So your emotions are on the surface. Doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It means that you're having a normal reaction to an abnormal time. But we need to pay attention to them, because if we don't pay attention to the symptoms, they can start to snowball. So how do we provide self-care? So I like this. I'm not a lazy bum. I'm a potential workaholic with extraordinary stress management skills. So my guy is, you know, relaxing, obviously. Doesn't look like he's shaved in a few days, has his potato chips and remote control, and he's, you know, his wife, I guess, is on his case, but he says, look, I'm dealing with my stress. I have extraordinary stress management skills. So there's some things we can do when we feel stressed and when we're worried. One of the things is we can learn to tolerate worry. So worry is a pretty common thing, and there is a big difference between worry and obsessing, all right? So when we're worried, if I look at my arm and I see a spot on my arm, I can say to myself, oh my gosh, that could be skin cancer. That worries me. Kind of stresses me out a little bit. Maybe I should make an appointment with the doctor to look at it and develop a plan. That's worry. Worry is a great thing. We need to be worried about things so that we can make plans and deal with them. But a lot of times what we do is what we call ruminate or obsess. Oh my gosh, the spot on my arm could be cancer. I could die from cancer. And every day we get up and look at that spot on our arm, and every day we worry that it might be cancer, but we don't do anything about it. And we continue to just worry and worry and worry and obsess. Mark Twain said, I'm an old man, I've had many worries, most of which never came true. So if we look at the things we've worried about in our life, a lot of them, when we've gotten them checked out, have not come true. Some have. But in the grand scheme of things, if you find yourself obsessing, it's a time to say, what can I do about that? So notice when you're worrying, all right? Be aware when you have a thought running over and over in your head, and remind yourself that worrying in and of itself doesn't help. Worrying with a plan, that is helpful. And focus on the present. I encourage people who struggle a lot with worry to schedule a time to worry. And that sounds kind of funny, right? But keep a little notepad, and my time to worry is from 5 to 5:15. So every time I find myself worrying, I jot it down, and then I go, okay, I'm going to worry about that at 5 o'clock because that's my worry time. And then at 5, I sit down and I go through my list and worry, and at 5:15 I stop. Right? Sounds funny, but it can be very, very effective because it helps us recognize that this continual obsession with things isn't super helpful. So courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is the quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I will try again tomorrow. And I think that when we feel stressed and anxious, that sometimes we just need to remember, I need to take this at a day at a time and get up and face the day tomorrow. Another way, obviously, is to learn to problem solve when you're worrying. So ask yourself, is this a problem I can solve? And brainstorm, make a list. I used to laugh at my husband. I was like, because we would go out of town on vacation, and he would spend half the vacation worrying about whether or not the grass was going to be overgrown when he got home. And he'd worry about that quite frequently. And I would say, okay, let's talk about what solutions we can do. Can we hire someone to cut it while we're gone? Can we have a neighbor check on it? What's the worst thing that could possibly happen if the grass is overgrown when you get home? What can we do to handle it? Brainstorm solutions. Get really creative, really out there, right, with your solutions. And then pick the best idea and give it a try. And if it doesn't work, pick another idea on the list. So actually try and say to yourself, this is what I'm worried about. What are the things I can do to solve it? And what's my plan? Stay calm and vigilant. I can handle anything if I have a plan. I truly believe that in my life, that if I have a plan, I can deal with it. Not every plan's going to work, but I can always have a plan B or a plan C or a plan D and go from there. So it's not easy fitting 60 minutes of exercise into my busy schedule. Today I took 360 10-second walks, right? And that's kind of a creative problem-solving technique. Another thing that's important to do is build resilience. So resilience is just being that kind of person that believes that they can deal with problems and that they can bounce back from different things. So think about the challenges you've been through in the past when you're faced with a challenge and ask yourself, how did I get through those challenges I had before? What did I do that was helpful? Who was supportive or helpful? And what advice did I get? And can I reach out to that person again? And could any of those things help me now? I think a lot about some of the challenges I've had in my life. And when I think about those challenges, one of the things that always helped me was reaching out to a friend or to someone that I trusted or cared about who was objective in the situation. Sometimes when you're in the situation, you are not objective, but there are other people that are. And I would say to myself, friends reach out to you, people reach out to me all the time to ask for my advice and guidance. And why don't I reach out to other people? In some respects, I feel like I'm not a good friend if I don't reach out, because people don't want to take and take and take all the time. They also want to be able to give. So building resilience is really important. I want to talk a little more about resilience. Remind yourself, especially during this time, that we have risen to the occasion of dealing with the stresses in life right now in ways we never anticipated. We can't control this pandemic, but we can certainly control how we react to it, and we can think about the things that have gotten us through. I mean, there have been so many acts of kindness, of heroism, of different things that we've done, kindnesses to people that we've dealt with. Learning to Zoom. A lot of people, this is like we learned to Zoom during all this. We also, during this time, in order to build resistance, we need to maintain our physical health as if this is a marathon. So this is a marathon, and anytime if we have long-term stress, I like to think of it that we need to train like an athlete. So this is when I need to eat right. It's when I need to exercise. It's even if, so I'm one of those people that bought a Peloton during the pandemic. Exercise for me is a huge stress reliever. best purchase I ever made because I can get that regular exercise. And I just need to remember that I need to do that in order to get through this. Prioritize right now decompressing and soothing activities. This is not a time to say, oh, that massage is a luxury. This is a time to say that massage is a necessity. Manis, pedis, all those different kinds of things are absolutely things that we need to do now to take care of our mental health. Meditation, long hot baths, any of those kinds of things can be stress relievers, and they really right now are not luxuries. These are things we need to do to maintain our mental health. Another resilience tactic that I really love is a gratitude practice. So it's hard to be grateful and hateful at the same time. And if we're grateful, then that negativity sometimes won't creep in. And sometimes it's very hard to be grateful during times like this. One of the things that I have been very grateful for during this last year and a half is that the stigma of mental health has started to decrease. More people are recognizing that they're having challenges with their mental health or with stress, and they're reaching out for help, and that help is becoming much more accessible with the use of telehealth. So where somebody maybe used to have to get off their couch, take their car, drive to an office that maybe they really didn't want to go to in order to see a provider, they can now sit in their own home and access through telehealth and talk with someone about their mental health and their behavioral health. And I think that's a gift. I think that the stigma of getting help for mental well-being has been something we've struggled with for many, many years. And if that's the one gratitude I can take from this, I'm going to remember it every day. We need to establish small goals for ourselves. So did anybody have a pandemic project? They learned to bake bread, or they created a garden, or they did something, that was something outside of what they normally did. Create a goal. Take up a hobby. Try something different. Set a goal for yourself. I had a friend who crocheted a bunch of stuff. She learned to crochet. She had never crocheted before, and then she's giving gifts, and that was something she did to help herself. This is also a time we really need to stay connected. And unfortunately, we've started to tighten back down again, and so we still need to think of those creative ways that we can stay connected. I'm a brand new grandma. So my granddaughter Avery turns 1 tomorrow, and she is definitely a pandemic grandbaby. So she was conceived during the beginning of the pandemic. We had a virtual baby shower because we could not gather. During her birth, only mom and dad were allowed to be, there when she was born, masked up. I have pictures of them in the room, in the birthing room in mass. She came home. We had a virtual christening, and we had very high hopes that we were going to have a first birthday here in Florida where both sets of grandparents are, but we're having a virtual birthday party. But when I look at that little girl and I look at her family, she's happy, she's healthy, she's smiling. She doesn't know the difference. And while it's not exactly the same as being there, it's a lot of fun to be on those Zoom calls. I FaceTime with her every single day because, we need to keep some distance, but she needs to know who I am. So we need to make those connections, and we need to be thoughtful about making those connections. And then we need to ask for help. So when we feel like we're at a place where we can't manage things, we need to ask for help. And I'll probably talk a little bit about that more later. Another technique I really love is what's called realistic optimism. Often when we're under stress or we're worried or we're dealing with something, we think of the worst possible thing that can happen. And the reality is that worst possible thing sometimes happens, but a lot of times it doesn't. I can remember many times going to the doctor and going, got this, I was on WebMD, so I know what this worst possible outcome could be, and when I get there, it's something minor. So we need to really say, when we have those thoughts, is that the only option? What would be so bad, if that was the option, what would be the worst thing that could happen, and how would I cope and deal with that? And then to say, what is really the most likely outcome? What is the most likely thing that's going to happen? And also, what would I say to a friend? So if I were given a friend advice, would I say, oh my gosh, that spot on your arm is probably melanoma, is probably going to kill you in like 2 weeks? That isn't what I would say. And it's probably not true. But I will tell you, when you go on WebMD, that's what you believe. So realizing that realistic optimism doesn't mean you don't think about what the worst thing is, but you're a little more realistic and try to be optimistic about what the outcome is. So I really like this quote. The pessimist complains about the wind. The optimist expects the wind to change. The realist adjusts the sails. So when we think about realistic optimism, what is the problem we're confronted with, and how do I adjust the sails in order to deal with it? Another technique to help deal with stress is a technique called cognitive reframing, and that's the practice of shifting how we view an unpleasant situation. So we've got lots of ways when we're confronted with an unpleasant situation to view it. We can view it in a very negative manner, we can view it in a positive manner, a realistic manner. Sometimes we just need to challenge our underlying thoughts and reframe what we're thinking. So this is probably my favorite slide. So I can't go out because of the virus. Sounds weak, whiny, and boring. Try instead, I've sworn an oath of solitude until the pestilence is purged from the lands. Sound much more valiant and heroic, and people might even think you're carrying a sword, right? So we can reframe how we deal with things. We can sit and say, this is horrible, this will never end, I could say, I am devastated that I can't see my granddaughter on her first birthday. And I can sit and think about how awful that is. Or I can think about, she's going to have a great time at that birthday party with her friends in Kansas, and the people that are there, and I'm going to be able to watch it and be involved, and I can reframe how I think about that. I don't have to get sucked into the negative hole. I can reframe and adjust how I think about things. So as I was talking about with resilience, this is a time we really, really need to look after ourselves. So we need to eat healthy. We know that if we eat in an unhealthy manner, that actually can contribute to our stress levels. So really high carb, high sugar diets, they cause us to have almost a physical crash. So we might feel good in the moment, but then our blood sugar is going to drop and we're not going to feel great. So high protein, low carb, all those kinds of things that help us to maintain our physical health, we're going to feel a lot better. Exercise regularly, big component of exercise, and I know when we're done, Anne's going to talk a little bit about that. When we exercise, our body releases endorphins, which are our natural stress relievers and our natural painkillers. Anyone watch the Olympics? Yeah. Glued. I love the Olympics. Glued to the Olympics the whole time. I'll watch any sport. I don't know. I watched wrestling. I watched volleyball, rugby. That's an interesting sport. But my favorite sport, outside of gymnastics, because I raised a gymnast, is the marathon. So I love the marathon. And when you watch the marathon, at about mile 23, these athletes look like they will die. They're staggering. You can see that, they're not really focusing. They truly look like they are never going to be able to finish the race, and some don't. But then you see the second wind kick in, and you'll see them get what's called runner's high, which is kind of that second wave, and that's that endorphin overload that happens. So all those endorphins, you get this endorphin rush, and it gives you that second wind to carry on. Women in childbirth have 3 times the level of endorphins that they do on a normal day. And that helps them with the pain of labor and childbirth and getting through that. It's those natural painkillers, natural antidepressants, natural stress-relieving hormone. So when you exercise, and if you exercise, even if it's walking, or I ride my bike or whatever you do, you're creating an increased level of endorphins on a consistent basis, which helps you to feel less stress. So exercise is a really, really great way to help and deal with stress during stressful times. Sleep, super important. When you are stressed out, often it's very difficult to sleep. You're worrying, things are running over in your mind, so you need to do good sleep hygiene techniques. So things that are good for sleep hygiene: go to bed at the same time, get up at the same time, even if you have insomnia. Try not to nap during the day so that you get a good night's sleep at night. Also, if you're laying in bed and you're worrying and worrying and worrying and you can't sleep, get out of bed, okay? Because if you don't, you'll start to associate your bed with being unable to sleep, and you'll get what's called anticipatory anxiety. It's like, oh no, it's time to go to bed. I'm not going to be able to sleep. No, I'm not going to be able to sleep. Didn't sleep last night, right? So that's not helpful. So you don't want to associate your bed with being unable to sleep. I went through a bout of insomnia. It's been many years now, but I vividly remember it because it's very uncomfortable. So I would get up and bake. You know, I would do something kind of boring. I'd bake. I'd have this nice thing to take into work the next morning. But it really helped me to kind of get through that period of time. I also do a lot of meditation when I go to bed. I have this cool headband. So it's a headband that has earphones in it. It's not like wearing, you know, earbuds, but it's just it's called a sleep band. And it connects to my phone, and I have an app called Headspace. And they have meditations, and they also will tell you a bedtime story, which a super boring bedtime story. I remember one was, I don't know, it was about something in the woods and some scientific fact, and I was like, this is the most boring thing I've ever heard. Put me right to sleep. So those kind of meditation things can be really helpful. We talked about staying connected, and when you're stressed out, it's really important to keep a routine. So sometimes when we are really stressed, we start to get out of our routine. We change our bedtime, we change the time we get up, we change the things we do during the day. Routine helps to keep us grounded, and is a really great way to help ourselves. So somewhere I'm missing that. Oh, I know what it is. So this says, I don't know why my words aren't there, but it's, I'm going to give you a prescription for exercise, which is in order to manage your stress. That was one of the things that he did. And then finally, ask for help. So one of the things that we learned during the pandemic is help is out there, and we need to access it. People don't get help unless they ask. I recently took a training called Mental Health First Aid, and we're really hoping to get mental health first aid out. We want it to be like the CPR. So CPR, you know, if you see someone lying on the side of the road and you're CPR trained, there are things you're going to do, right? You're going to go over, you're going to check for help, you're going to call 911, you're going to start compressions, and you're going to do it to Staying Alive by the Bee Gees. So we all know that. We want mental health first aid to be the same thing. If you come in contact with someone who's struggling, we want you to be able to talk with them, to have the conversation, and to be able to connect them with resources, both professional and self-help. Those are things that are going to help us as a community. So I put a couple of self-help books up here because I'm a big believer in self-help, and especially with stress. You know, people who are struggling with chronic anxiety, chronic depression, definitely need to see a professional. Sometimes when we're stressed out, we can try the self-help things first and see if they're effective. I love workbooks. I also raised a daughter who loves lists and workbooks. So workbooks, I don't like free-form kind of journaling. I like to have an assignment, to complete it, and to give me structure. So these are some great workbooks: the Anxiety and Phobia Workbook, the Feeling Good Handbook, and the Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction Workbook. And you can find all those on Amazon. So key takeaways, you know, anxiety, depression, stress are really common, especially right now during this pandemic, because they're normal reactions to an abnormal situation. And there are a lot of strategies we can use to cope with the trauma we're experiencing, and good health habits will help keep us mentally fit. And if you've tried all these things and it's not working and you're still struggling, professional help's available. And we actually have a great resource within Florida called 211. And 211 is a helpline that you can call, and they can connect you with multiple resources and multiple things that are out there for professional help. So thank you for being with me this evening. And I think you're going to talk a little bit about the programming, right?
Yeah, a few years ago I was teaching Senior Fit. I'm a big proponent of yoga. And, I mean, you touched on so many of the things that I would touch on. I can't express how important good nutrition is. And a few of you may have heard me relay this quick story before, but years ago, before my mother passed away, I brought her here. She needed hip replacement surgery. She was in terrible shape. Before she could get her surgery, she had to stay at my house. You go through all the tests, you go through all the stuff, whatever. And I just fed her nutritious meals. And we had arguments because she wanted ice cream and cookies
I understand that.
and chocolate. And I would give her grilled chicken and broccoli, which was referred to as, and I quote, that green stuff. Having said that, I wouldn't give her the ice cream. I put it in the top of the refrigerator. Had the old school refrigerator with the freezer on the top. She couldn't get it. Made her mad. I used it as a reward. She'd eat her broccoli, I'd give her the ice cream. She got healthier. She was getting better sleep. We have to sleep. It's part of how our body repairs itself. She got good nutrition. She got better sleep. She got her hips replaced. She went back to worrying the world for several more years. I mean, it was amazing. You know, it was wonderful. So I really always, you know, we talked about this in the class when you were in the class with me. You have to move your body. It's designed to move. Get a little bit of exercise. Take a walk. You know, it doesn't have to be
Chair dance.
50 push-ups, you know. And then the yoga, the breath. You know, I'm a yoga instructor and I believe in it. And even though my seniors in my Senior Fit class would always say, and we don't like yoga, I'm like, well, sweetheart, you just did yoga. And we would talk about breathing. You can't meditate? Watch a cloud go across the sky and then look for the next one. You can't think about what you're worrying about if you're watching these clouds go across the sky. You know? Take those deep breaths. Breathe in through your nose and then exhale all that stress out through your mouth. Fill your lungs up. Make it feel like you're opening and closing an umbrella, because you're right, we shallow breathe. And we need to use our lung capacity so that we get more oxygen in our bodies. So everything you touched on, you took all the wind out of my sails. Good nutrition, excellent sleep, and you do something that's very similar to what I do. My husband liked to put on rock and roll music that I just do not know where it came from. You're laying in bed, you know, it's not relaxing. The bedroom and the bed needs to be something that your mind knows, this is where I go for rest and relaxation and rejuvenation and regeneration and all those things. So one day I got to the Alexa thing, the thing that plays the music beside the bed, whatever it is. And I tried this, and I said, Alexa, play yoga music from Pandora, just because I knew that was a station. I'm not promoting Pandora. I don't know what all the stations are, but it plays this calming music. It's sometimes nature sounds. It's sometimes someone singing, chanting kind of stuff. It almost works like white noise, but it's relaxing. You can't think about something else because you're, you know, and you think, I'm never going to go. And you do, and you sleep soundly. I know, but I'm going to sleep. But the one thing I will say, and this may not be for everybody, I also tell my little friend Alexa, stop playing music in 2 hours, because after a while, it's kind of like drinking alcohol. You can go to sleep initially, but it'll wake you back up. So after I go to sleep, I have it turn off. And I get up at 5 o'clock every day. I'm on a routine. I'm telling you, this one has read my life story. So you may be wondering, why is Parks and Recreation involved in presenting Healthy You? We know traditional parks and recreation agencies provide parks and programs for residents to enjoy their leisure opportunities. But why parks and recreation and mental health topics? The reason why is actually very simple. It is our commitment to serving our community in whatever capacity in order to advance and foster healthy lifestyles for everyone in our community. Please take a look at our latest annual publication. It's what I left in everyone here live. It's in your seat. Entitled Inside the Outdoors, which contains critical and important news about our department. You'll also note toward the end of the publication is a section which contains an A through Z guide on all of the many programs and events that we offer to our to help our residents. Everything we do here, whether it be a special event, fitness program, athletics, golf lesson, or youth programming, is done with the mission to get our residents connected in whatever form they feel comfortable with so that our community is unified and given the necessary tools to thrive, whether it's through a global pandemic such as COVID-19 or otherwise. Before, during, and after the current global crisis, your Parks and Recreation team has been and will be hard at work for you and appreciates the opportunity to present just a glimpse into what we have to offer our guests in order to thrive and prosper. We truly hope that you'll consider joining us again for session number 12 of Healthy You, where we will discuss with another subject matter expert the topic of bipolar affective disorder. This session will be here in the same room, offered similarly through Zoom on Wednesday, October 6th, 2021 from 6:30 to 8, and we hope to see you here. As always, the Port St. Lucie Parks and Recreation Department is honored and privileged to have the daily opportunity to provide this community with parks, amenities, and programs which increase the quality of life in the city and enable its residents and ourselves to learn, grow, and serve every day. Thank you very much for coming out. Thank you, Ms. Ann Posey, for presenting that, and we hope to see you next time. Thank you.